Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Blind Eye Live. I am your host, Blind Eye himself, Hunter King, owner, proprietor, and on screen talent of Blind Eye Media, a small internet sports media firm. So, today we're going to go through some news stuffs. I'm going to enlighten everyone on what is a Poku, or rather, who is Poku. And we're going to get into my NFC West Draft primer. So, Niners, Rams, Seahawks, Cardinals fans. I got you today. And sorry if I'm a little stuffy. I will try to mute or to remember to mute myself. Future times I have to clear my nose or throat. I've been dealing with some allergies the last couple of days, real bad, to the point that my throat got really, really bad last night. It is feeling way better today. But around the time I went to sleep last night, I think I got some kind of mini throat infection or something because I started running a little bit of a fever. But that's good. I am COVID negative, so that's also good. But yeah, so not sick. It is just apparently allergies and side effects. But I'm feeling way better today way better now than I was at like yesterday morning or this morning when I woke up. But if my voice does seem a little raspy or something, that would be why. So, with that being said, let us jump right into the news. Let's see. So let's hit some ESPN headlines because that's what my stream has become. MJ to serve as Kobe's presenter for the Hall of Fame. So, because of the pandemic last year, we didn't have our usual Hall of Fame induction ceremony. So we're having two this year. Or I think the NBA is doing that because that's how the NFL is doing it. So MJ is going to present Kobe. How about that? That's actually kind of cool. Nets Aldridge abruptly... Whoa, what is this? Brooklyn Nets center LaMarcus Aldridge abruptly retires due to a health scare. Brooklyn Nets center LaMarcus Aldridge announced on Twitter on Thursday that he is retiring from the NBA after experiencing an irregular heartbeat during his final appearance with the team. Dude, that sucks. Because he was probably going to finally win a championship. For 15 years, I've put basketball first. And now it's time to put my health and family first. Aldridge, 35, said he experienced the irregular heartbeat during the Nets game against the Los Angeles Lakers on Saturday, after which his condition worsened. Bro, that sucks. And there I did right into the mic, just clearing my nose. Sorry, guys. Aldridge had missed the Nets' past two games with what the team called a non-COVID illness. Well, that stinks for the Nets and for Aldridge, but right now, but I mean, that's good for Nicholas Claxton. That's good for anybody else trying to get minutes at center for the Nets. I have been a proponent of Nick Claxton needing to probably be the guy getting the most minutes for them anyway. But you hate to see it happen like that. So LaMarcus Aldridge retiring from the NBA after 15 seasons. Dude had one of the silkiest post fades in the history of the NBA. Dude was a joy to watch play when he was on. Oh, Zach LaVine's in COVID protocols, likely to miss at multiple games. Let's just open a few of these in new tabs, and that's not the one I thought I was hitting. That's the one. Ooh, that's interesting. Seahawks signing Aldon Smith. We'll get into that. All right. Ex-Nebraska football player found not guilty of assault. Jurors in a Lawrence County, Nebraska court found former Nebraska football player Katarian Legrone not guilty of assaulting a female student in 2019 after about a week of testimony. Legrone, 21, and his former teammate, Andre Hunt, were cleared with first-degree assault, blank assault. I'm leaving out a word because I think it'll help me in the YouTube algorithm because they follow the kind of stuff people say. Although I feel like it's less strict for live streams than actual normal videos, but still. They were cleared of first-degree blank assault after the woman reported the alleged August 25th, 2019 incident to the Lincoln Police Department. So it's been over a year and a half. And I bet you this guy got kicked off the football team and kicked out of school just to be cleared. Man. Both men were suspended indefinitely from the football team the next day. And as of December, they are no longer on the roster. Officials at Nebraska who investigated the women's Title IX sexual misconduct complaint found the two men responsible. And the university expelled them in April 2020. Both men are still listed as active in the NCAA transfer portal. The woman told jurors that she accepted Hunt's invitation to come to the apartment, which he shared with Legrone, to hang out. She said as soon as she arrived, Hunt led her to the bedroom and initiated sex, which she said in court she did not want. He initiated sex that she did not want. That's an interesting way to put that. She also said she did not physically or verbally resist because she felt pressured and scared. So you didn't say anything. This might be a controversial opinion, but I happen to be of the opinion that I personally would not invite someone over to my place of living who was I would not invite a woman over to my place who is not a significant other. And the only thing I could reasonably think, based on me being a dude and having a bunch of male friends, is they invited a girl over to their place for one thing and one thing only. And I feel like most people watching and listening to this would completely understand that. Now, it's a little different, like, when you're in an actual relationship with someone. But some dude invites you over, and to me, that's what I would expect the dude to be trying to do. Is get laid. If you didn't resist or anything, or say no, and went with it, he would have no idea that you were not interested, because you're literally doing everything that would say that you're interested. She said she noticed another man enter the room, but Hunt positioned blankets around her head and held her head down so she would not see LeGrone. She said that while Hunt was having sex with her and was facing away from him, or with her as she was facing away from him, he switched places with LeGrone, who then began having sex with her, to which she did not consent. Now, that sounds super sketch. Everything in the previous paragraph, that, if that's true, that's sketch. However, let's see how this goes. During testimony Friday, LeGrone's defense attorney, Mallory Hughes, asked the woman why she did not physically or verbally resist the sex after she realized LeGrone had switched places. You let Mr. LeGrone have sex with you for 15 minutes? Isn't that true? Hughes said. The woman said, he AR'd me for 15 minutes. Tell me every single thing you did to get him to stop having sex with you during those 15 minutes, Hughes asked. The woman responded, I prayed. Hughes said in her closing arguments, you can't assume he should have known she didn't want to have sex. She saw him. He started having sex with her, and she didn't do anything about it. The law does not require this young man to read her mind. Which that is true, but once again, as I said with the Sean Watson thing, if you don't do pervy or, if you're not having sex outside of marriage, or in this case, if all this did transpire that way, it's still super just ugh. But at the same time, none of us are mind readers. Our law says that women have a duty to resist. Okay. When they see somebody approaching them, they have to say, stop, get out. Or, I guess, get off, considering, it wasn't her place, so she would be the one needing to get out. I don't know. This lawyer does know the law. I am not a lawyer. So I'm going to, and from my own, you know, research, she's saying it differently than I would have, but she is right. The two men initially told police that LeGrone didn't have sex with the woman. Yeah, that's not, well, don't lie. Jurors watched a video in which LeGrone apologized to an officer for initially lying about not having sex with the woman, saying he was scared about the accusation, which, to a degree, that's actually reasonable because, as what has ended up happening for the last year and a half, he was suspended and then basically taken off the football team roster, expelled from the university, meaning he also lost his scholarship. This guy lost everything. I keep forgetting to mute. He then told the officer that he did, but only after she said it was okay for him to join. So he's claiming that she said it was okay. Hunt told jurors that he did not hear any such exchange between LeGrone and the woman. Hunt agreed to be a witness for the prosecutors in exchange for having his felony sex assault charge dropped to 2 misdemeanors for accessory to attempted false imprisonment and false information. LeGrone did not testify during the trial. Everyone in it for themselves. Jurors also heard from another female student who said that in August of 2018, LeGrone came into the room where she was having consensual sex with another football player and started having sex with her without her consent. She said she was shocked and surprised when she noticed LeGrone having sex with her. She said she stopped the activity saying, "I don't know what you thought this was," and left. She would eventually report the incident to university investigators and police, but she told jurors that she did not want LeGrone prosecuted for what happened to her. I gotta stop clicking on these stories, don't I? What world do we live in? Like, I guess that wasn't that big a deal to her. So speechless. Hughes, LeGrone's attorney, asked the second woman about being part of a Title IX lawsuit against the university for money. The lawsuit references the university's handling of the woman's report of the alleged 2018 assault, as well as another incident she reported, along with former Nebraska volleyball player Capri Davis, that LeGrone and Hunt allegedly groped them at a party in March 2019. I don't know if you've seen some of the dancing at college parties, and it's been years for me. But, I mean, people literally look like they're borderline having sex through their clothes, dancing in clubs and at parties and stuff. So, and are groping each other while doing it. So, and this is why that wasn't my thing. Hughes questioned the woman who reported the alleged August 2019 assault, which this case is about her plans to also sue the university for financial gain. although that woman has not yet filed a lawsuit and is not part of the Title IX lawsuit filed by the other women. In her questioning, Hughes repeatedly brought up and displayed social media posts and messages the woman sent to her friends while she was at Hunt's apartment that night and afterward. Hughes described those messages as being joking or lighthearted and inconsistent with being traumatized by an assault. In her opening statements, Hughes said, let me move this to where, double check that I'm even on where I was. All right, there we go. Let me see, where was I? In her opening statements, Hughes said the woman had planned to use the sexual encounter with Hunt and Legrone as a means of getting revenge on her ex-boyfriend, whom she contacted afterward. Oh my gosh, people. At a news conference after the trial, Legrone said he plans to go back to school and continue to play football. This experience was one of the hardest things I've ever had to endure. My mom had to endure, he said, but we kept our faith. The Lancaster County Attorney, Pat Condon, issued a statement expressing his disappointment at the verdict and encouraging victims to come forward. These are difficult cases, not only during the Blank Assault Awareness and Prevention Month, but at any time. This man's disappointed that he lost the case. That's it. Because from what it sounds like, which they didn't go very in depth. They went very in depth on the accusations. They didn't go very in depth on the evidence Miss Hughes, the attorney, provided. But if there are messages of her joking about it, being lighthearted, and they really didn't go in depth in their article. I'll have to do some more research, but to me, this sounds like, people being degenerates, and then someone using that to their advantage later. And then failing. I don't know. How about just don't have sex with random people? That goes for everyone. Man, the stuff I come across on here. Let's go to... boom. Let's check out these other articles. South Carolina men's basketball coach Frank Martin accepts responsibility for 6 and 15 season. Well, wait, what? How did I hit that twice? Yeah, don't ask me. All right. So, pass rusher Alden Smith is signed with the Seattle Seahawks. Let's get on some actual more sports-related news. Let me reorient the camera here. Whoop. Let's see. Alden Smith has signed a 1-year contract with Seattle Seahawks. The 31-year-old Smith adds to what was already a deep collection of edge rushers in Seattle. They re-signed Carlos Dunlap and Benson Mayowa, added Kerry Hyder. That was an underrated signing this offseason, by the way. And returned Jamal Adams, the safety who is used a lot in blitz packages. LJ Collier, who they drafted 2 years ago, who was an absolute reach. Allen Robinson, Alton Robinson. Don't know who he is. Rasheem Green, a second-round pick. I think it was a second-round pick from like 3-4 years ago. And Darrell Taylor, their second-round pick last year. They're not doing a very good job of developing their edge rushers, by the way. At least so far, it seems. Let's see. But that's cool. Alden Smith. I was hoping this article would get into I don't care about the contract. I care about how well his stats from last year. He started the 2020 season strong with a 3-sack outing in Week 3 against the Seahawks, but he finished the year with 5 sacks. Second to DeMarcus Lawrence on the Cowboys with 33 QB pressures and had 48 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 2 fumble recoveries, returning 1 for a touchdown. Sounds like he played in every game, seeing action on 808 defensive snaps, the most among Cowboys defensive linemen, and 4th most on the defense. Which that may have, or all of that work may have played a part in his late season fade and some nagging injuries at the end of the season, which makes sense. He had been out of football for several years. Gosh darn it, I'm sorry, I keep clearing my nose without muting. I mean, this guy had 33.5 sacks over his first 2 seasons. He was ridiculously productive over the first few years of his career, and then he had a string of arrests. Arrested in 2013 on suspicion of DUI. After running into a tree. In 2015, he was released by the Niners the day after he was arrested on a hit-and-run DUI and vandalism charges. He signed with the Raiders a month later, but was suspended for a year. Yeah. And then he was released by the Raiders in 2018 after he was arrested on multiple charges, including domestic violence, assault, and false imprisonment. Smith pleaded no contest to a pair of misdemeanor charges in November 2018 to settle the case. And then he had been out of football until 2020. And he had basically been out of football even during most of his time with the Raiders. So Smith was fairly productive last year. And you give him another year, and I would bet that his production levels would probably improve and his conditioning. But with as many people as they have in their rotation, Seattle, him being in a more rotational role might up his ability to be productive late in the season. Okay, now this happened yesterday. I missed this, and there's something else I'm going to talk about as well from yesterday because I don't stream on Wednesdays. Attorney seeks assault charges against Los Angeles Rams defensive tackle Aaron Donald. All-world defensive tackle, arguably the best football player, period, in the NFL, Aaron Donald, has had a criminal complaint filed against him in Pittsburgh Wednesday, saying the defensive tackle and others assaulted a 26-year-old man at an after-hours club last weekend. Attorney Todd J. Hollis said his client, DeVincent Spriggs, needed 16 stitches and suffered a broken collarbone, a broken nose, a concussion, and a sprained or broken arm. The alleged attack occurred around 3 a.m. Sunday. My father always said that nothing good ever happens after midnight. Hollis said, and the attorney released a photo that showed Spriggs with facial injuries and swelling. And that man's face looked really bad. I am not showing that on the stream. According to Hollis, Spriggs inadvertently bumped into Darnold, and an incident ensued inside the Boom Boom Room nightclub that caused both parties to be asked to leave. When they got outside, Mr. Darnold approached Mr. Spriggs, and Mr. Spriggs was punched and attacked again, allegedly by Mr. Darnold and the individuals that were a part of his group. Hollis said his client provided information to the police about the incident on Wednesday. Pittsburgh police said that detectives are reviewing the complaint and video footage and are consulting with the district attorney's office to determine whether charges are warranted. The NFL said it would look into it, which means Donald will be suspended. Because it could show on video that Donald never laid a hand on him, or that the guy attacked Donald first, or something else that would basically make Donald look like a saint, and the NFL will still suspend him for a personal conduct violation. Now, I'm not saying that that is not me saying that the video doesn't show anything, because I haven't seen it. I don't know what happened. I'm not making judgments. I'm just saying, if the NFL says they're looking into it, that means a suspension will come regardless. Donald is a three-time... Oh, wait. I missed some of it. The Rams released a statement that they are aware of the alleged incident involving Donald, who is a three-time Defensive Player of the Year and seven-time Pro Bowl selection with 85.5 career sacks. That is ridiculous. We are collecting more information, yada, yada, yada. Donald, 29, is a Pittsburgh native and was a star college player at Pitt, where he often trains during the offseason. He also has several charitable endeavors in the area. The Rams selected Donald with the 13th pick in the 2014 draft. He is in the midst of a 6-year, $135 million extension. Well, this is another one to follow. So, Aaron Donald's in somewhat hot water. We'll see what actually happens. Let's see. Washington football team owner Snyder files motion against Allen. Well, I don't know what that means, but we're about to find out. Let's hit these. A new lawsuit filed against Watson? Well, I guess we're opening that. All right. Let's see what we got here. Washington football team owner Daniel Snyder files motion against former team president Bruce Allen. Oh boy, this ought to be fun. Washington football team owner Daniel Snyder filed a motion of discovery against former team president Bruce Allen in a federal court seeking to go through the text messages and documents that allegedly led to negative reporting against him. Well, this isn't a surprise that Bruce Allen tries to ruin the reputation of everyone with basically anyone and everyone that either has been employed with him or that has employed him. I mean, he tried to smear Kirk Cousins. Give me a second. Okay. Snyder filed the suit in California Central District Court on Thursday. Let me make sure my camera's lined up right again. Yeah. In California Central District Court on Thursday against a man who served under him for 10 years. Snyder fired Allen after the 2019 season. Allen also was close to the three former minority owners in the franchise: Fred Smith, Robert Rothman, and Dwight Scharr. The group exchanged court filings and accusations with Snyder over the past year, but he bought out their shares last month, ending their squabble. The latest filing regarding Allen is related to Snyder's lawsuit against India-based MEAWW, which wrote several unsubstantiated allegations against Snyder last summer prior to an article by the Washington Post detailing sexual harassment charges against former team employees. The filings noted that despite Allen's prominent position and hands-on role in running the team during the time period discussed in many of these negative articles, respondents' name rarely, if ever, was mentioned in these articles and was completely absent from the defamatory articles at issue in the Indian action. It also said that Allen talked to Baltimore investor John Moog, who was hired by the minority investors to sell their shares in the franchise on at least 87 separate phone calls lasting nearly 21 hours between a period of January 9, 2020 and November 18, 2020. And it noted that in the 6 weeks leading up to the publication of the articles deemed defamatory, Allen spoke to Moog 21 times for 4.5 hours. The filing also said that Moog had contact with various media outlets during that same period. The filing stated Allen texted website links and excerpts of negative news coverage of Snyder to Moog, suggesting that Mr. Allen actively sought out such information. The filing stated that, already read that. Allen joined the organization in December 2009 as an executive vice president general manager. Though he long had power in the organization, he did not officially become team president until 2017. Allen was Snyder's right-hand man at league meetings and in efforts to try to secure a new stadium site, an ongoing quest. A series of stories by the Washington Post detailing sexual harassment in the franchise, some of which predated Allen's tenure, led to an independent investigation by the NFL into the team. That investigation is ongoing. The league is yet to receive a report. So, a bunch of drama between rich people. Atlanta Falcons signed all-purpose player Cordarrelle Patterson. Arthur Smith, looking for a potential gadget-type player here, signed a one-year deal with running back, receiver, kick returner Cordarrelle Patterson, one of the best return men in the NFL. And has been since his rookie season with the Vikings after he was a first-round pick. Although he never really developed as a receiver, although I blame a lot of that on the Vikings coaching staff at the time. Patterson, a four-time Pro Bowler, is considered one of the most dynamic kick returners in the game, leading the NFL in kick return yardage the past 2 seasons. He has scored on kick returns in each of the past 3 seasons and has 8 in his career, which is pretty much like he's averaging like 1 a season, I think. I'm trying to remember exactly when he was drafted. I think it was 2012. He has averaged 29.8 yards per kickoff return in his career, second most all-time behind Hall of Famer Gale Sayers. That's ridiculous, and he's played like half of his career or more in that period of time since we moved kickoffs forward, so it's even harder to gain yards. Sayers averaged 30.6 yards, so he's within a yard of the all-time record from 65 to 71. He's one of 3 qualifying players in NFL history and the only one who has played in the last 4 decades to average more than 29 yards per kick return in his career. That's wild. A first-round pick out of Tennessee in the 2013 draft by Minnesota. Patterson was initially a wide receiver, but in recent years has transitioned into a player who can play receiver or running back along with his kick return duties. Sorry, my nose is just running. Between Minnesota, Chicago, New England, and Oakland, he has played in 127 games, catching 216 passes for 2,087 yards and 10 touchdowns, while rushing 167 times for 1,017 yards and 8 touchdowns. Very versatile player. Patterson will be familiar to new Falcons special teams coordinator Marquise Williams, who faced Patterson the past 2 seasons, while Williams was an assistant in Detroit and Patterson was the returner in Chicago. In Williams' time in Detroit, he also worked with another high-level kick returner, Jamal Agnew, and now he gets to have one of the best in league history in Patterson. The Falcons have also signed safety Duron Harmon. Ooh, that's an interesting pickup for their safety group. Harmon was with the Lions last season, where he started all 16 games for the first time in his career and had 73 tackles with 5 passes defended and 2 interceptions. Harmon spent the prior 7 seasons with New England, where the 30-year-old started 29 games and had 17 interceptions. That's actually a really good pickup for them. Atlanta released running back Ito Smith, who had 639 rushing yards and 314 receiving yards in his 3 seasons with the Falcons. He was a 4th-round pick out of Southern Mississippi in 2018. By releasing him, the Falcons save $920,000 in cap space, a dead money hit of $155,000. So, some minor moves for Atlanta. Harmon's good for their secondary. Helps improve their safety group. Patterson helps their running back depth and in the return game. And he can play as a receiver. So Arthur Smith's a very creative coordinator and play caller. So gives him a versatile weapon, if I could hit the X button there. Bears and Browns players are skipping voluntary workouts. Joining players from a number of other teams that say they won't be reporting for da-da-da. Players remain unclear about the protocols. Protections and rules remain inconsistent despite the last-minute communications by the NFL on Wednesday. It is for these reasons that da-da-da. So a bunch of these players are like, we felt mentally and physically healthier after having a virtual offseason last year. Which, sure. That's not the reason they're doing this. Well, it is somewhat. But part of it is, the big thing is, it's the rules and procedures that they'll have to deal with while there that people don't want to deal with again. People don't want to be isolated from their family. They don't want to be disallowed from going out and doing things. It's like if they want to live life as usual. And I'm sure having the virtual offseason also had its benefits. You know, more time at home, whatever. We are professionals who train year-round, and that's true. It's not like especially the guys who actually care. We're not talking about those fringe guys who sometimes you're like, how did Jameis Winston come in at nearly 300 pounds? Or whatever. The Broncos, Seahawks, and Buccaneers on Tuesday announced that their intentions to skip workouts. Yeah, I have no issue with this. It's like they're voluntary. They're called voluntary workouts. Voluntary off-season programs. But they've always been treated as involuntary. So I'm glad they're actually doing doing their thing. Women amend lawsuits versus Texans Deshaun Watson to disclose names. New suit filed while another one is dropped. Let's see. Wait a second. So we got a Watson case update. 22 women who had filed lawsuits alleging inappropriate behavior and assault amended their petitions to disclose their names, including a new lawsuit against the Texans quarterback filed Wednesday afternoon in the Harris County District Clerk's Office. The latest lawsuit was filed by a freelance makeup artist who says Watson reached out to her via Instagram direct message September 2nd, 2020, asking if she offered massages. The lawsuit details 2 separate incidents that occurred during massage sessions in September and November, during which Watson allegedly assaulted and harassed the woman by exposing himself, touching her with his member, and groping her. Another one. There are things about the way this is being handled that make me feel like he's getting shafted. But there's also so many that I'm like, I'm really getting to that point where I'm like, where there's smoke, there's probably fire. Although maybe this is just a smoke bomb, but golly, Bill, this is... The plaintiff alleges that while she was massaging Watson the second time, he instructed her to grab his member. She said no before eventually doing as he instructed because the pressure from Watson's relentless instruction coercing her against her will left her power. That is a long ways to say I gave in and just decided to do it anyway. I mean, the way that she put that there, you could literally infer the situation as he asked her once and then just kept saying please, 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 please until she did it. I'm sorry, like, if she had left and not done anything or whatever, that would have been harassment. The thing is, she went through with it, and she's even saying there that his repeated instruction, relentless instruction, coerced her against her will. No, you just decided to do it. I'm sorry I'm giving my own opinion here so much, but this is the most detail we've gotten out of any of these articles about any of these lawsuits from, the reporting here at ESPN. And don't take this as me dismissing, this stuff, because, to be honest, at this point, his attorney has come out and said that, Watson was, or, the consensual acts did take place. I think Watson's a perv, but at the same time, to me, this just sounds like you just decided to do it. This week, one of the original lawsuits filed against Watson was dropped by a plaintiff for now, according to court documents. In light of privacy and security concern, plaintiff has decided not to pursue her case for now. Plaintiff reserves the right to refile this case once such concerns are addressed. Which, what I'm assuming there is, she didn't want to be publicly named. And so they now have another case to take its place, so they're still at least at 22 or whatever. After 20 of the original amendments or petitions were amended Wednesday, one was refiled and amended Thursday after an emergency hearing was conducted Wednesday. Last Friday, 2 judges ruled, We've gone over all that. the plaintiff's attorney, Tony Busby, said in a statement Tuesday that his law firm previously attempted to make available to defense counsel the names of the plaintiffs suing Deshaun Watson and intended to do so in due course. We were concerned about the safety of the plaintiffs. They wanted them to agree to a protective order where the identities could be used in litigation but not broadcast to the world. It's like, that's not fair. If you're going to broadcast, if we're going to put Deshaun Watson on blast in the media, and as they're doing and try and destroy him in the media before the case even happens, I mean, they deserve to be under just as much scrutiny. I mean, that's how the system works. See, and Busby's saying that says that they wanted a protective order, whatever. Watson's lawyer, though, and this was last week, like when they were filing these motions, to get the names, they asked Busby to identify the clients and were told to file a motion. But anyway, so a new case has been filed. One has been dropped. But who would have guessed that but yeah, that new case, it's like the way she words it, it's like, so you just gave in. To me, that sounds like you consented. You didn't say he put a gun to your head or started beating you. You just said he kept asking and you just divinely said yes. Golly, Bill. This whole situation is just gross. See, what else? Was there anything else here that... Oh, so something that happened yesterday is no longer on the headlines. The Cleveland Browns finally agreed to a contract with Jadeveon Clowney for 1 year and what looks like it's up to $10 million. He will now play in a rotation with Tack McKinley across from Myles Garrett, which might lessen the importance of pass rusher for the Browns in the draft. I don't think it should, because neither of those guys, they're both on 1 year contracts. You need to play them for the future. So yeah. So with that being said, I'm going to get into my next segment, which is, what is a Poku? And I'm going to answer that right now. He was one of my favorite draft prospects in the 2020 NBA draft. Super raw player from Serbia. He is the youngest player in the NBA, and his name is Alexei Pokuševski. And Poku is the hottest thing in NBA scouting circles, or was one of the hottest trending things in NBA scouting circles last year, because he was 7 feet tall. He was like 190 pounds or something like that. Super long. He has like a 7'3" wingspan. Super skinny, but he has guard-like ball handling, awesome passing vision, and an outside shot, and with good form. Now, his percentages are kind of low this year. I don't even think he's shooting 30% from 3 at this point. Let's see. Yeah, so Oh, field goal 3 percentage. So yeah, he's at 29% from 3, but his free throw percentage is at 84.6%. His shooting percentages will improve. Sorry, as he gets older. Part of it is he didn't have like a strength and conditioning program playing in the Greek second division. Um, you know, before this. So, like I said, the tantalizing traits that he has is he's tall, he's long, he has good shooting form from outside, he has really good touch, he has some explosiveness for a guy his height. Like he shows flashes of just blowing past people. He has a really creative handle. He plays at his own speed. He's not necessarily like super fast, but he's really good at times of changing speed. And he's moved up from, like I said, the second league of Greece, which is like, to some people would say there are rec leagues here in the States that are almost as competitive as like the Greek second division. Like the Greek second division, maybe Division III college basketball. So he wasn't playing like incredible talent level. For reference, Giannis Antetokounmpo, when he was drafted 15th overall, Poku, I believe, was drafted 17th overall by the Thunder, and they actually traded up to get him. It was 17 or 18. The thing is, he just has incredible tools. So he's really spending this year really getting up to speed. Early in the year, he really struggled when he was on the court. He did a stint during the G League bubble when they had all the G League teams play, and he made really rapid progress in the G League. He was playing really well, and a lot of that's probably because he was playing on an NBA roster during the early part of the season, and he took kind of a step down in competition. And he's been playing better since then. He's still uneven, like he still makes mistakes. Like he needs to tighten his handle. It's like he does handle the ball really well, but sometimes he's loose with it because he's 7 feet and he's so young. I mean, I think he's still 18. It's like, yes, he's only hitting like 29 or 28.9% of his three-point attempts. But he is shooting off the dribble. He is not afraid of firing, and his shot looks fine. Some of it, I think, is that because he's so thin at his height, some of it's a strength thing. And as I think when he gets a full offseason and like with an NBA team, I think he's going to progress rapidly. And a lot of guys, it's like you're still developing as an athlete and as a like physically into your early 20s as a man. So he is not nowhere near done as a physical like product. My shoulders, I didn't really get much taller after high school, but my shoulders are much wider than they were when like I entered college. Like I'm between 18 and 21, I developed physically still. I know I have friends who grew after their 21st birthday. Like I know a guy who grew like an inch and a half between his 20 or between 21 and 23. So he's still it's possible he'll still get taller because like Giannis Antetokounmpo got drafted at basically the same age. He grew like an inch and a half, or actually I want to say it was like 2.5 inches after coming to the league, 2 to 2.5 inches. He was like 6'9" when he was drafted. Now he's over 6'11", or at least within a couple years of being in the league, he was 6'11". So it's possible Poku will get even taller. But Poku is like everyone's favorite. It's kind of like how everyone was like super obsessed with Kristaps Porzingis when he was coming out, and everyone was just like, "Oh man, cool, like super tall international dude."
That's kind of what's happening with Poku. But Poku's a very different player. Poku is very much a perimeter player who happens to have the height of someone who is a center. And while he still has a long ways to go defensively, he does show flashes of him using his length, using his agility to mirror smaller players, but using his length to swarm and just engulf smaller players on drives. And on offense, he has these. If you look at some of his highlights on YouTube, or Kevin O'Connor did a great video on him recently for the Ringers YouTube channel, and for the Ringers website on his show The Void, where he talked about Poku, and he outlines very greatly what is so enticing about his game and why he has such a bright future and an elite upside. This guy has as much upside to be a star as anyone from this year's draft class because of his skill set, his size, and everything. Give me a second. I'm sorry for having to step away so often to blow my nose, but I'm really struggling in that regard. But yeah, Kevin O'Connor really did a good job of outlining and showing examples of his skills and what makes him so intriguing. And they have him coming off of handoffs, and he is totally comfortable firing right out of a handoff, attacking the defense. He makes whip-smart decisions. There was a clip in Kevin O'Connor's video where he catches a pass coming around a screen. It might have been a handoff toss from the guy, but coming around the big and the guy diving to the basket, and Poku gets the ball and basically pushes it to the big running the basket, and the ball has maybe touched his hands for 0.4, half a second, and he's already made a decision, and he's flicked this ball perfectly to this guy to get an easy to get the bucket. And he just makes some whip smart plays, and he's a great passer. Not just are the passes accurate, but they have zip on them. And because of his long arms, he can wrap around defenders and make passes that smaller players can't, or are much harder for them to make. This guy can reach out of bounds. It's just honestly, it's like young Giannis highlights in some cases. Now, he's not necessarily the athlete that Giannis is. They're different. They're built differently. But it's very interesting what he will, or what he can become. So if you've been seeing the word Poku flying around, or people talking about Poku, it's you have now learned what Poku is. Or who Poku is, rather. And he is an awesome young basketball talent with tons of upside, and I hope we get to see him reach every inch of that upside, because, man, it'll be fun. And he's got a really cool story. So, boom. You have learned. So now, let us get into the last segment of the show. We're gonna go through the NFC West. So I've got to remember who finished last in the NFC West. Oh yeah, the 49ers did. So we're gonna go all the way to the bottom. And they're also picking first. out of those teams. And of course the 49ers made the massive trade up. So, actually, I'm going to refresh this page. There we are. So the 49ers aggressively moving around the draft board. Although most of their picks that they sent are in the future, so they actually have a lot of draft capital this year. Well, I say a lot. They have 3 fifth-round picks. But considering they moved up from 12 to 3, they have a lot of draft capital. They still have their own second, third, and fourth-round picks. So let us pull up the handy-dandy depth chart here. Let us go back. Oh, I didn't want the roster. I wanted the depth chart. That's okay. I can just hit it right here. Okay. So let's check out this handy-dandy depth chart here. I wish I could... Oh my goodness, I was actually able to catch it and close it today. There we go. So when we're looking at the Niners, we're assuming at 3 that they are going quarterback. You don't trade 2 future first-round picks to move up to draft anything else, or at least you wouldn't think they would. But this is a team, like, when you look at their roster, the Niners have 2 elite young receivers, or elite catch and run receivers in Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, who they drafted in the last 2 drafts. Samuel still has 2 years on his rookie deal. Ayuk still has, Samuel's in his 3rd year in the league, so he's got this year and next year on his 2nd round deal. Ayuk, including this current season, has 4 years, including the 5th year option on his rookie deal as a first-round pick. And beyond that, they've got Richie James, who's a really good return player, or return man, and can play in the slot. You've got Mohamed Sanu as a veteran receiver on the roster, who's really versatile. Solid hands. You've got Trent Sheffield, who I believe is a converted corner. You've got Jalen Hurd, who's missed his entire first 2 years with injuries. Hopefully Hurd doesn't get hurt, because he suffered a torn ACL on the first day of training camp last year after sitting out all of his rookie year with after a back surgery. Hurd has immense physical attributes and potential. He was an elite running back in college. He was when he left high school. He was 6'4". He had incredible speed, and I believe while he was at Tennessee, he broke like 22 miles an hour on a treadmill, like sprinting on a treadmill. The guy's ridiculous. He was playing at like 6'4", 240 at the University of Tennessee. He then transferred to Baylor to get away from Butch Jones. And because he wanted to transition to a receiver. As tall as he was and as big as he was, he felt like he would be a better weapon as a receiver. And he was being used as a receiver some at Tennessee, catching and looked very dangerous. So as a receiver at Baylor, he actually was a really dominant threat on comebacks, in breaking routes, and he has great long speed, which I would assume was even better after, cutting weight to where he was playing at like 6'4", 6'5", like 215, 220, 225. So Hurd has great upside. His former college teammate, Juwan Jennings, who they drafted in the 7th round last year, also on the roster. And then you have Austin Froll and Travis Benjamin. They have a bunch of guys. Not all of these guys will end up making the final roster. So we will definitely see. Obviously, they re-signed Trent Williams to a record deal. Laken Tomlinson's penciled in at left guard. Alex Mack, they just signed to be their center. You've got Justin Skule, who projects their starting right guard, and Mike McGlinchey, one of the best young right tackles in the NFL. That's your starting offensive line. In terms of your backups along the line, Sean Coleman is a solid swing tackle. Weston Richburg, who he's dealt with a lot of injuries, but if he's now your swing guy on the interior of your line, that's awesome. You have recent draft picks Daniel Brunskill and Colton McKivitz, who are also swing players along the line. McKivitz can play inside and outside. So, and then, let's see. And they've got former draft pick Jake Brandel, who also plays on the inside. Those other guys, I doubt would make the roster. And then, of course, they've got a great tight end group led by George Kittle. In my opinion, the best all-around tight end in the league. Then you have Charlie Warner out of Georgia, who was a solid 6th-round draft pick for them. And then Ross Dwelly, but I would actually expect the 49ers to draft a tight end or pick one up undrafted this year for their depth. But they've got a solid tight end group. Warner and Dwelly are solid. Of course, you'll have to figure out what to do with Jimmy G upon drafting a quarterback. Their quarterback room right now, they've got a bunch of people. They've got Josh Johnson on their bench. They picked up Nate Sudfeld from the Eagles. Apparently is on a reserves contract. Josh Rosen is under contract, as is Nick Mullins. C.J. Beathard is apparently elsewhere these days. Actually, I think he got signed somewhere in free agency, and I've forgotten where. Oh, gosh. I rarely have issues with allergies like this. So, at the running back position, interesting. Our has Jeff Wilson actually listed as their number 1 back, ahead of Raheem Mostert, which I don't necessarily believe that. But those are their top 2 guys, and they have a bunch of guys that I don't really know who they are, to be honest, after them at halfback. And then they have the best fullback in the league in Kyle Juszczyk, I believe is how you pronounce that. So their offense is really solid. I could say that they could improve at running back, but Mostert and Wilson are a really good 1-2 punch. On their defensive line, I mean, they've got a heck of a edge rotation with Dee Ford, Eric Armstead, and Nick Bosa as your top 3. And then you've got developmental players like Jordan Willis and Kentavious Street, who have a lot of promise. Deshaun Hall. Defensive tackle, let's see. I'm doing this to get the needs, and then we can go down through their draft. So Zach Kerr has been a really, really underrated and quality player on the interior. They have last year's first-round pick, Javon Kinlaw. Of course, they play a lot in the nickel, as most teams do these days, and that slides Eric Armstead inside, where he ends up playing with Dee Ford and Nick Bosa on the edges. But Kinlaw has immense potential. I expect him to have a much better second year, much improved year. And behind them, DJ Jones, Kevin Givens. It's basically all their guys behind their starting 2 defensive tackles are pretty unproven, although they really like DJ Jones. So they could improve their interior D-line depth. They've got a great linebacker group. Dre Greenlaw and particularly Fred Warner. Warner has become one of the best linebackers in the league. Dre Greenlaw is really, really good in his own right as mid-round picks. But as with the defensive tackle spot, their depth there is fairly unproven. And not exactly like stellar, although they like Mark Izakoa and Aziz Al-Shair. Some people really like him. I like them adding Samson Ebukam at linebacker. I think that was an improvement. I don't really know a lot about Demetrius Flanagan Fowles. Like I said, a lot of these other guys don't really have much of a reputation, but the Niners play Greenlaw and Warner play most of the snaps. Even when they're in more of a base defense, in a lot of cases, that they're putting Ford or Bosa as kind of like an outside linebacker outside of Armistead, and they're running 5 defensive linemen. Seriously, though, every time I blow my nose, I feel better. Like, I feel like I'm feeling better and better. Oh, goodness. So, yeah. But they could definitely improve linebacker depth. I mean, although they do have a lot. And on this depth chart, like, they brought in Nathan Jerry from Philly. Not that he's great, but they've got him listed as a third stringer right now. And I would have thought he would have at least been their 4th best linebacker. And then in the secondary, they've been able to retain most of their starters from last year. It does seem like they've let Richard Sherman walk, but they bring back Jason Verrett, who had his first healthy season in several years and was great. Because when he's been healthy, Jason Verrett's been a great corner. Jaquiski Tart and Jimmy Ward is a really, really awesome safety tandem. One of the best in the league. They really like Deontay Johnson, who they've developed. And although I don't think he's their starter at that spot, but he's definitely a rotation guy that they like. Kwan Williams is a really, really good slot corner. They brought back Emmanuel Mosley, who I actually expect to be the starter opposite Jason Verrett. But at the very least, they'll probably be rotating their starters at both positions, but particularly across from Verrett. They also brought in Brian Brody Calhoun, who is a really good slot corner as well. Versatile corner. Like, they have depth at this position. Ken Webster, Tim Harris. But yeah, but that still doesn't preclude the 49ers from drafting a higher upside corner than guys they have. Backups at safety, Marcel Harris, Tavarius Moore, Tavon Wilson. They really liked Harris. And then they've got Obi Melifonwu way down here. He's super athletic, but hasn't necessarily been great. They could definitely improve on their secondary depth. Everyone could improve on their depth if they can get a better player than the guy they have as their backups to begin with. So it's not like I'm saying anything like, mind-blowing here or whatever. But yeah, so now that we've gone through their roster, let's look at what the 49ers have got. Make sure I'm correctly reorienting my camera. Oh, I over-rotated. Okay, so for the Niners at 3, we're all expecting them to go quarterback. The word is it's Mac Jones, and I actually am probably more okay with that than 90%, 95, 99% of draft Nick type people, because I think Mac Jones is great. And I've been going back and forth on whether I think he or Trey Lance is the third best quarterback in this draft. And yes, like the argument there is upside versus like potential upside versus what I know Mac Jones can do from day one, and even someone who a lot of people see as one of the most finished, if not the most finished quarterback prospect in this draft is Mac Jones, but this idea that he won't get any better is absurd. It's absurd. He's what, 22? Of course he can get better. Of course he can get better still. Peyton Manning was considered a completely polished quarterback prospect. It took him, it's like his rookie year was rough. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, he held the rookie interception record for a long time. But I think he also that season set the rookie touchdown record or was close to it. So it took Peyton Manning a couple years to really get into the saddle. Like Peyton Manning will tell you he improved at things his entire career. Until the very end. But I think Mac Jones would be a great fit because Shanahan likes quarterbacks who, as the term has been going around, quarterbacks who can be a joystick for him to play the game through. Jones has the mental understanding, like his mental game is probably on a different level from every quarterback in this class. Mac Jones has the fastest, as Marcus Whitman likes or has said, the fastest processor of any quarterback in this draft. He processes information and makes decisions quicker than any quarterback in this class. That is extremely important at the NFL level because of the level of speed that he will face. And in the 49ers offense, that speed of recognition is weaponized. And with so many of their concepts, you look at how good the Falcons were with Matt Ryan at quarterback. And Mac Jones, I think, is a better quarterback than Matt Ryan was when Matt Ryan was coming out of Boston College. Some people might laugh at that, but I think Mac Jones is a better prospect than Matt Ryan was. Matt Ryan maybe had a little more of an arm. Mac Jones's arm is fine to me, more than fine to me. He has amazing touch, great accuracy, great ball placement. Kyle Shanahan can weaponize that. And with so much of their concepts in San Francisco being run and catch, having a guy like Jones with elite timing, anticipation, processing, pinpoint accuracy, ball placement, Jones is a ideal fit. And people could talk about, yeah, but imagine if he had like Trey Lance or Justin Fields or Zach Wilson. If Zach Wilson's available at 3, I think he would absolutely be the pick. Whew, that one snuck up on me. Or really it ran up on me. But anyway, Mac Jones is a quality. I think would be a quality pick here. I think I would take him over Justin Fields because he already has the mental game down. And for a team like San Francisco, who could win a Super Bowl this year with the roster they have, I don't think Justin Fields. And maybe yes, Kyle Shanahan could make things easier for Fields, whatever. I have issues with his decision making, his ability to progress through reads and process the field. I don't think he's going to get up to speed quick enough for the 49ers window right now. I'm actually more bullish on Trey Lance, and if they drafted Trey Lance here, I think that'd be a great pick. And I wouldn't necessarily criticize the Fields pick either necessarily, except I would rather have Lance or Jones. I trust Shanahan to make good decisions. These guys have done a really good job for the most part in the draft. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. So we'll see. But I think the pick is Jones at 3. So if we move past that, you're looking at a draft where, to a degree, you can go best player available, but there are some needs. You could upgrade that right guard spot over Justin Skule, in my opinion. And at 43, you could get a guy like Trey Smith, Quentin Miners, if you wanted. But I don't think that's the best use of resources at 43. I think they should, personally, I think you're looking at interior defensive line or corner. So, with that being said, I would suggest you go with either the best player or the best corner available, which at this range could be Asante Samuel, though I think he'll be gone by now. I've mentioned him a lot in this range, but I think he could go late first. Samuel's a little short for their scheme, though, but if you're talking about guys who would fit their scheme who could be available here, Kelvin Joseph out of Kentucky, long athletic corner. Tyson Campbell of Georgia, Eric Stokes of Georgia. Stokes is faster, but I prefer Campbell. Campbell still ran a 4.38, and he's almost 6'3". I think Tyson Campbell would be a perfect scheme fit for the 49ers on the outside. So that's what, if you're looking at corner, that's why I do it pick 43. They don't have another pick until they're picking round 3, which I believe is a compensatory. Yeah, it's a compensatory selection because they've traded their own 3rd round pick away. So it's going to be a while. So with this draft, the only way I would take an interior lineman at 43 is if maybe, I mean, if you love Davian Nixon, maybe. But I would say Christian Barmore or Levi Onwuzurike would have to be available at 43 for me to take an interior lineman in the 2nd round. And considering they took Kinlaw in the 1st round last year, they probably don't go interior line at 43. There's another argument that maybe 2nd round, if a really elite running back is there, like if an Etienne or a Harris has fallen, or if Javonte Williams is there, maybe you take that and you really upgrade your running back group. But I like Mostert and Wilson for the Niners, and that offense makes pretty much any running back look good, especially if you have a good offensive line, and the 49ers do. So I wouldn't go running back in round 2. You could also take a edge player to add to your edge depth at this spot, which would be like, I think Joseph Asai would be an awesome fit in this defense, playing that for when they're kind of in those 4-3 type sets where they've got but their strong side line, or they've got that strong side linebacker basically playing as more or as a defensive end outside of the defensive end, kind of like where it's like a hybrid 3-4-4-3 look. Think that Seattle, I think the positions they call it the spur. It's what Bruce Irvin would play back at the height of that defense. You put a guy like Osai, who is explosive and strong, but also has coverage ability, he'd be a great fit if he was available at 43, I think, for this defense. And would allow you to have someone to replace D Ford long term. So I would say at 43, you're looking at, I think Tyson Campbell, maybe a little bit of a reach at 43, but if, say, Kelvin Joseph is off the board. And my thing is, even with their scheme, I think Asante Samuel can play in any scheme. And worst comes to worst, he ends up being your slot corner when K'Wan Williams, who can push and eventually replace K'Wan Williams and be an upgrade at that spot. Because Samuel has elite quickness and an elite ball skills. But Tyson Campbell would be his just length. Joseph would also fit there. Campbell's a better athlete and a little bit longer. So I would really like his fit in San Fran's scheme. Molden could fit too, out of Washington. But I would say corner at 43. Then in round 3 at 102, this would be a great spot to get a guy like Joe Togiai or Jay Tulafele, defensive tackles from Ohio State, USC. Or if you wanted to put some kind of big run plugger type guy into your D tackle rotation, he probably would be gone by now. But Tyler Shelvin, if he was available at 102, would be an interesting fit, because on rundowns you wouldn't be able to run up the middle against him at Kinlaw. And with Eric Armistead and Nick Bosa on as your DNs, I mean, that'd be nasty. But I would say value-wise, 102 might be a really good spot for a linebacker. Think Monty Rice, say Caleb McGrone out of Michigan. Trying to think of there's another linebacker that I've really taken a shine to recently as well. Oh, dadgummit. He played at South Carolina, I think. I don't know how I'm blanking on him. Anyway, linebacker would be, I'd say they need to take a linebacker somewhere in rounds 3 through 5. I would say round 5, because they have 3 picks, would be a good spot to go after a running back. And thinking of the running backs in this class, I got some guys who would really fit the system. Jarrett Patterson doesn't really have like a lot of, he doesn't have very many college catches at all. But his running style would be perfect in the Niners scheme. He's a little undersized. He doesn't necessarily have like top end breakaway speed, but as a rotational running back for the team, he'd be a really good fit. Poku Williams out of Kansas would be a good fit. He's got solid hands. He's a strong, low-to-the-ground runner. This guy was extremely effective at Kansas. So you put him in Shanahan's scheme, and he might turn out to be like an all-pro running back. I mean, I like Poku Williams. I'm not saying he will be, but And in terms of a more receiving-oriented guy, Jalen Hawkins out of Louisville would be an awesome fit in the 5th round. One of the most agile players in the draft, one of the quickest players in the draft. Talked about him a little bit when I went through Ty McShay's all-satellite team for the year. All-satellite meaning best in space. Players in open space. But anyway. But this is a team that can really do best player available up and down the board. There's also some interesting tight ends they could target in the draft if they wanted to really upgrade their second tight end spot. You've got guys like Hunter Long of Boston College that you might be able to get in the 3rd round. On day 3, Charlie Kohler of Iowa State. You've got Trey McKitty of Georgia, who I'd need to really look at his tape to see if he was as good of a blocker as Kittle, but in terms of his athleticism, this guy has that kind of... He has Greg Kittle potential in that regard. I mean, George Kittle, sorry. But yeah, like rounds 4 through 7, and round 4 you could get probably a decent middle linebacker or backup middle linebacker, Chaz Surratt of UNC. Like I said, McGrone could be available there. Monty Rice could be available there because there are a lot of people who really have Rice underrated. You've got, I think it's KJ Britt, or if it's not KJ, it's like JT or something, Britt out of Auburn. Likely would be available in the 5th round. And you could potentially get like an interior lineman somewhere in round 4 or 5 as well. So from there, we'll go to the next AFC West team. So let's hit up the Arizona Cardinals. Got to go all the way to the top. All right. So let's try and be a little quicker going through the Cardinals roster. Let's go back to the home page. Or actually, that's what I want. NFL depth charts. So let's see. Let's hit the Cardinals depth chart. So I think this is a weird choice on their depth chart. They've penciled AJ Green as a starter here next to DeAndre Hopkins. I would actually expect Christian Kirk to be a starter on this team. Either in the slot or outside. But they've got Andy Isabella in the slot, which is interesting. Looks like, I guess Hakeem Butler's already off their roster. That's unfortunate for him. Let's see. Former draft pick Keyshawn Johnson going into year 3, 6th-round pick. It's probably, in my opinion, I'd have him over JoJo Wood and A.J. Richardson, but that's just me. They could target a receiver at some point in the draft still. Larry Fitzgerald's officially retired, so it would have been interesting to have Fitz come back and have him and A.J. Green on that roster together. But they don't have to take a receiver. Offensive line, you've got Kelvin Beachum and DJ Humphries as your starters. You've got 3rd-round pick Josh Jones last year, who I wouldn't be surprised if Jones took that right tackle spot from Beachum this year. Would not surprise me at all. On the interior, you've got Justin Pugh, former Pro Bowl guard. They were able to get Rodney Hudson from the Raiders in a complete robbery
And then Brian Winters is a solid guard, but they could improve on the interior. You look at Galliard and Max Garcia are your two best interior backups. They've got Shaq Calhoun as a backup offensive lineman, which isn't bad. He can play tackle or guard, but he's not exactly moving the needle a ton, really. I'm not super familiar with Brandon Bowen either, so so they could look at offensive line in the draft. At tight end, you've got Max Williams, Daryl Daniels, not super familiar with him, and Ian Bunning. They don't really have. It's like they could definitely use an upgrade at tight end, but they don't use tight ends a ton in his system, so maybe not. They've got good quarterback depth. You've got Colt McCoy as a backup for Murray, and then Chris Streveler, who has more name recognition with football people than he does actual production. And then Cole McDonald, who the Titans drafted last year in the 7th round and then just promptly cut him before or during, or they might have cut him before training camp. It was really weird. At running back, they've signed James Conner, so it's not as big a need with him and Chase Edmonds there. And Eto Benjamin, DJ Foster, and Jonathan Ward. But you could always, like those other 3 guys that I mentioned after Conner and Edmonds, could always draft a guy to compete with them and maybe outplay them and even compete with your starter or your top 2 guys. On the defensive line, former 3rd-round pick Zach Allen looks like he's slated to start. You've got Lecky Fotu, who I thought was maybe even underdrafted in the 4th round last year. I really like him. You add J.J. Watt to your defensive line. You've got Jordan Phillips now to be like middle linebacker first. You've got Isaiah Simmons, who hopefully they'll be more creative with this year. Jordan Hicks, who they signed away from Philly, I think maybe going into last year. It's like Simmons, I expect to pop this year. And then they've got Evan Weaver, who they drafted in the 6th round last year, who I really like. And I think by the end of this year will probably be their 3rd best off-ball backer. I'm really surprised that the Cardinals didn't try to bring back Hassan Reddick, considering how cheap he was. But they did bring back Marcus Golden last year in a trade. And he's a productive guy. I think he'll be really good next to Chandler Jones. You've got Devon Kennard as their 3rd guy to kind of rotate with him. And then you've got some guys like Kyle Fitz and Terrence Smith, who I want to say both those guys started off their careers with San Francisco, but I could be wrong. But they don't really have like a bunch of guys after those top 3 guys that I named at the edge. They could use more depth there. I think they should target potentially the linebacker positions, but particularly like their edge positions. And then you've got corner, and corner is their biggest need. They signed Malcolm Butler. They drafted Byron Murphy in 2019. He's been really he was good last year. Robert Alford has missed like the last 2 years or so with injuries. Like, I wouldn't count on him as a starter, but he could be a good rotation guy. But they don't have like a ton of
necessarily of depth at corner. And I would actually expect to see Robert Alford in the slot and Murphy outside rather than the way they've got it listed. But let's see what's their corner depth looks like. Kevin Peterson, not super familiar with him. Picasso Nelson Jr., don't know him from Adam either. And their depth guys at corner over here, Rico Gafford, Jake Whitaker. Jalen Thompson's the only one I'm really familiar with. So and I expect, and we'll get into it here in a second, I expect the corner to be their pick in round 1. At safety, you've got Charles Washington, who they got off waivers from Detroit. I really hate having a runny nose, guys. I'm sure everyone does. But Washington's a solid rotation safety. They have Deontay Thompson, another solid kind of rotation safety. Chris Banjo, who's more of a special teams type. And they have a bunch of guys further down. And they've picked up Sean Williams. He's on the back end of their depth chart from, if it's who I'm thinking is, he was originally drafted by Cincinnati out of Georgia. And he's kind of like a box safety type. But they do have Buda Baker as their free safety, one of the best players in the league, versatile guy, can play in the slot too, can play corner. Buda's great. So, yeah, so looking at them, I definitely see. So their first pick is at 16 overall. And I'm going to say that whoever the best corner is available on the board is going to be the pick there, which I would assume will be either J.C. Horn or Caleb Farley. I think one of those two guys will be the pick at 16. They don't have a lot of draft capital because of some different trades. They don't have their 3rd and 4th round picks. But in round 2, and the Cardinals are a team that could trade down to get assets because they could move down and get and still get one of Farley, Horn, or Greg Newsome, or Asante Samuel and pick up a mid-round pick or whatever. Although I expect them to stay put at 16. At 49, that would be a really good spot for them to target I've seen some people have them targeting a receiver here. I just don't know. You've spent in the last few years, you've spent 2nd round picks on Christian Kirk, Andy Isabella, at that position. You traded a 2nd round pick to get DeAndre Hopkins. You've used a lot of your 2nd round draft capital on receivers. I would say maybe focus somewhere else and continue to develop the young guys that you've drafted in the 2nd round and in some later rounds with, Keshawn Johnson. And, yeah. So for me with that 2nd round pick, I'm thinking you could double down at corner or go with a safety. Maybe Javon Holland at that spot. Although, maybe that's a little rich for Holland. I don't know. That's the middle of the second round. Personally, though, I would probably just say, heck, just go corner again and draft like a Kelvin Joseph or an Elijah Molden. And Molden, coming from Washington, they've had great success with Buda Baker and Byron Murphy getting Elijah Molden in the second round. Just keep going back to that Washington defensive back well. But if they go corner in the first round, I would be surprised for them to do that in the second. 49 would be an interesting spot for them to maybe target Pat Freiermuth out of Penn State, a great all-around tight end. But once again, that might not be a great use of resources because the tight end is not exactly featured in Arizona. Another spot or place they could go, maybe running back, even though they picked up James Conner in the second round. Though, if you could get Javonte Williams at 49, that'd be kind of hard to pass up because he'd be. I mean, Edmonds and Conner are, solid all-around backs. Williams would be basically an all-around upgrade on both of those guys. But I still wouldn't, now that they've signed Conner, spend a second-round pick on a running back. So for me, this is where maybe you're thinking inside linebacker, maybe Nick Bolton's still on the board. Maybe I go with Nick Bolton. Personally, I think Monty Rice and Jabril Cox, if I saw one of them go in this range, I would be like, well, I've been seeing them graded lower, so maybe that's a reach. But in terms of talent level at the position, I don't necessarily think it would be that much of a reach. And Rice has been rising up my board, for sure. I think he's jumped Cox now for me. And Cox was my fifth linebacker, or fifth off-ball linebacker. So, or wait, sixth. But if not that, then maybe you go edge or somewhere on the defensive line. If somehow Levi Onwuzurike or Christian Barmore are on the board at 49, I would jump at the chance to take one of those guys for the Cardinals. Or if we're talking edge, Ronnie Perkins could be a really good fit. I think that Joe Tryon would be an amazing fit, another Washington defensive player. Joe Tryon actually might be, out of the second round guys, he might be the best fit. Or Joseph Asai, if Joseph Asai was available. Because I just feel like Azeez Ojulari is going to be gone by now. Or by pick 49. And Osai very well could be too. So then they don't pick again until round 5, and they have 2 7th-round picks. They have the Vikings 6th, and they have their own 5th. With those 4 later round picks, I mean, you're just looking at depth. You could really go anywhere, but I would say that those are probably mostly going to be defensive picks or a late round receiver snag, but I don't even see that. To be honest, I don't think the Cardinals should draft a receiver. Because I think they should be focusing on corner in the first round and then adding to their defense at all levels throughout the draft. Maybe O-line. So, Uno momento. Late show, and then and I'm sorry about the show starting late, whatever, and it's kind of going long. Had some stuff that I had to attend to earlier today. We had someone come over and spray the property, so had to delay the start because of that. So we're moving from Arizona to the Rams. Yeah. Well, I've been going in order of pick. Well, yeah. That was partially because, like, from the worst team to the best team, but I'm actually going to go. I'm going to do the Seahawks since they actually have a first round pick, and I'll save the Rams for last. Oh, wait. The Seahawks don't have a first round pick either, and they pick just before the Rams. So we'll go with the Seahawks. So the Seahawks have 3 picks. They have the 2nd, 4th, and 7th picks of the draft. There's not too much interesting really to talk about here because of that. Other than let's just go ahead and look at the Seahawks depth chart really quickly. Which, like I mentioned earlier, they signed another edge player today, but they're really set at receiver, especially the way they play. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett as their starters on the outside with Penny Hart as their starting slot, which Hart was one of my favorite players in the 2019 draft. Small school guy, really quick, really sudden, runs great routes. He just profiled as a prototypical slot player, and I could not believe that he went undrafted. Behind them, you've got Freddie Swain, super speedy guy who they drafted in the 6th round last year. He got hurt, but he was making plays on special teams and had a couple big catches last year. And then you've got like an upside guy that they drafted in 2019, John Ursua. Most of these guys, like beyond like Swain, could or may not make the roster. I expect the Seahawks to be aggressive in the undrafted market. I just don't see the Seahawks drafting a receiver based on the needs of the team. So their line, you've got Dwayne Brown, Damian Lewis, who they drafted last year in the 3rd round, 2017 center Ethan Pocic, who I believe I want to say they re-signed him this offseason. Yeah, because they moved him to center, which is where he should have been playing all along, and he was better. They got Gabe Jackson in a trade where they basically stole him from the Las Vegas Raiders. And that'll improve their interior of their line. And then they've got Brandon Shellett out at right tackle. And if they could upgrade there, that would be a huge deal for them. Behind them, you've got Jamarco Jones and Cedric Ogbuehi as your backup tackles. I mean, Jones was a 5th round pick in 2018. It's not really become anything special. Ogbuehi was a 1st round former bust, but they've decided to keep him around. Backup center Kyle Fuller. There's a Kyle Fuller that plays center too? Huh. And yeah, I mean, they could improve their interior depth. Like, out of their backups, Haynes was a 4th round pick in 2019. Obviously, he hasn't developed into a starter or anything.
So they could potentially use a pick on an offensive lineman. Tight end, you've got Will Dissly, Colby Parkinson, Gerald Everett. They picked up Gerald Everett, and they've got him as a third rounder. I'd say he probably slides ahead of Parkinson, who was kind of a surprise fourth-round pick last year, in my opinion. Because I had a fifth, sixth-round grade on him. Luke Wilson's still there, but he's been hurt so much. Or did they bring him back? Because I thought he left. So they're set at tight end, I would say. Then you've got like quarterback. Your backups for Russell Wilson are Danny Etling and Alex McGough. Good luck with that. Just hope Russell Wilson doesn't get hurt. I watched Danny Etling at LSU. I couldn't believe, because I think he got drafted by the Patriots. Like, he didn't even go undrafted. I think he got drafted. I couldn't believe it. Running back, you've got Chris Carson, former first-round pick Rashad Penny, Travis Homer as a solid third-round or a solid third guy. DJ Dallas, who they drafted in the fourth round last year, who has some return ability. Alex Collins deep on the depth chart there. But yeah, like I think they're good at running back. You're looking at their defensive line. They've got Kerry Hyder in as a starter, which I actually think low-key that would be smart. You've got Poona Ford as a really undersized nose tackle, but I would say Al Woods is the nose tackle. Ford's the more three technique type. Oh, that's what they called that role. The Leo. Not the Spur. Anyway. Last year's second round pick, Darrell Taylor, is the Leo. That makes sense. Last year's first round pick, Jordan Brooks, starting strong side linebacker, Bobby Wagner holding down the middle, of course. And then one of my favorite picks in the values in the 2019 draft, Ben Burr-Kirven in round 5 out of Washington, playing that right side, weak side role. And I thought that Shaquem Griffin was gone from the Seahawks, so I'll have to look at that. But they still have him on the depth chart here. And then Cody Barton, who was a third-round pick in 2019, that a lot of draft nicks really liked. I thought he was cool, I thought he was maybe a fourth-round guy, but there were a lot of people who were higher on him than me. So they could maybe use some linebacker depth. Probably do that in the undrafted range. It's kind of interesting how far down they have some of the guys on this list here, or on the depth chart here. Because I would have expected Carlos Dunlap to be the starter here, but, whatever. They have Rasheem Green listed as a defensive tackle, which is kind of interesting. Which maybe he's bulked up. But they really aren't very big on the interior on the defensive line. But they've got a deep rotation of guys like Carlos Dunlap, Alden Smith, Benson Mayowa, who've been around the league for a while. Last year's fifth-round pick, Alton Robinson. Their first-round pick for 2019, L.J. Collier. Darrell Taylor, who was their second-round pick, who I'm a little biased about. It's hard for me to have an unbiased opinion of him because he was a Tennessee guy, so I want to see him do well. And then we're looking at the secondary. They signed Akilo Weatherspoon away from the 49ers. So he'll be replacing, it looks like, Shaquille Griffin there. That's a downgrade. They've got Jamal Adams in at safety, and second-round pick in 2019, Marquise Blair. A really good young safety tandem. They've got Trey Flowers, who they really like, but I don't think he's as good as Griffin. He'll be starting outside at corner.
Jason Stanley, a waiver claim from the Jaguars. Ryan Noel. Quandre Diggs is a solid, or is like a more than solid, like third safety. Lyndon Stevens, waivers off Miami. Don't really know a lot about. You've got Amadi as a fourth round pick from a couple years ago, who's like their fifth. They've got him listed as their fifth safety. I think he's probably ahead of Noel on their depth chart. And then Jordan Miller is another corner. I would say the Seahawks second round pick needs to be a corner. But there's several ways they could go there. So for the Seahawks, we're going to make this quick. Second round, you're at pick 56. If you're wanting a corner, they'll fit your scheme. If Tyson Campbell's available, he's a perfect fit. Perfect fit. Eric Stokes is a good fit too. He's over 6 foot. He has elite speed. But Campbell's longer, still super fast, and he's got more wiggle. Eric Stokes for me is a third round guy. Although like Elijah Molden out of Washington would fit, Kelvin Joseph would fit, but I feel like both those guys will be off the board probably by 56. Maybe one of those guys will still be on the board. Those guys and Tyson Campbell will still be on the board at 56. That's what I would do. Otherwise, Davian Nixon might be a good pick at 56 to upgrade at defensive tackle. But I don't know. I think I would go corner if I were them. Round 4, this would be a good spot to go interior offensive line. I say interior, or I mean, they could at 56 maybe target an offensive tackle. They could do that in round 4 too. It's really hard to say what to see because there are more needs than there are picks here, and once you get into the fourth round, things become a real crapshoot because there are guys that you might have rated as a fourth rounder who go undrafted or go in the 7th round. There are guys that you have like 7th round or undrafted or don't even know of, and the Patriots or the Raiders draft them in like round 4. So basically what I would say for the Seahawks, you've got a 2nd, a 4th, and a 7th round pick, and you're looking at needs where you could, if you're upgrading the interior offensive line, it's really as depth. So maybe, because I think they've got 3 solid starters now across, or at the very least, you drafted Derek Lewis in the 3rd, or Damian Lewis in the 3rd round last year to start at guard. Ethan Pochich is your starting center. You traded for Gabe Jackson to be that guy. You've got a 4th rounder from 2019 in Haynes to be kind of your main backup guard. So I'd roll with that. I feel like you can upgrade on Brandon Shell at tackle. And you might even be able to do that in the 4th round in this draft. So I would probably take an offensive tackle in the 4th round. Which means your 2nd round pick is either corner or defensive tackle because you have so much invested at defensive end over the past couple drafts in a 1st rounder and a 2nd rounder. And then you have, other guys that you've signed. The Seahawks are just in a tough spot there. So with that being said, we're going to get to the last team in the division, which is the Los Angeles Rams, who don't pick until the 2nd round, but they have more draft capital than the Seahawks. They have 2 third-round picks. They've got a 4th. So let's quickly run through that, and then we'll wrap up the show. Because this one's turning into a little bit of a long one. So, receiver, you've got your top 3, which is pretty cut and dry. Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, who are both great. Van Jefferson, who they drafted in the 2nd round. He had an unfortunate injury, but I think that was a really good pick for them. He is exactly the type of receiver that Sean McVay, or that should work in Sean McVay's system.
They signed Deshaun Jackson. Whew, that was a big sneeze. But they signed Deshaun Jackson to be kind of a deep threat type and play out of the slot some. Their other three guys, I mean, I don't even know if they've even played a down. I'm not familiar with them at all. But I could see them targeting a receiver at some point in the draft, but I'd say it probably would be later. Until he retires, Andre Whitworth is going to be a quality left tackle, it seems. He's like the Tom Brady of left tackles at this point. They moved David Edwards into guard, and I think that was a good move. I think he'll be solid there. Brian Allen's a solid center. Austin Corbett, they've kind of resurrected his career. He's looking like a decent guard. Rob Havenstein is a solid right tackle. They drafted Bobby Evans in the third round of 2019. He can play tackle, but I feel like he could improve the team if they moved him into guard. But he's basically like a swing lineman all over. You've got Joseph Noteboom, who seems to be the backup plan, the guy to eventually take over for Whitworth at left tackle long term. He was a third round pick in 2018. A lot of people really liked him. My buddy Hayden was a huge fan of him coming out. But really, they could use more depth along the interior. I'm not like sold on Jamil Danby being anything. Coleman Shelton. I'm sure these guys are like fine players or whatever, but you know, these are guys that have never been on my radar. Dadgummit. All right, hopefully that's the last time I have to blow my nose before the end of the show. So let's motor through, get down to the tight ends here. So Tyler Higbee's coming back. He's a really, really good tight end. They did let Gerald Everett walk, but that was kind of inevitable at that point. There's some hype about Johnny Munt's upside, but I'm a bigger fan of their fourth round pick from last year, Bryson Hopkins. I think if they give him a chance, I think he'll be a great number 2 tight end to Higbee. And if I'm not mistaken, Bryson is the son of former Pro Bowl offensive tackle Brad Hopkins, who played left tackle for the Tennessee Titans the Oilers and Titans. He was a great player. I think that's his son. Of course, they upgrade to Matthew Stafford at quarterback. They've still got John Wolford as a backup quarterback. And they picked up Bryce Perkins, former Virginia quarterback, dual threat type quarterback. He is their third string quarterback right now. And Devlin Hodges, good old Duck Hodges, I'm thinking that's the same guy from from the Steelers, so he's their fourth stringer. And then Derek Sett at running back. You've got Cam Akers, they drafted in the second round last year. He's their top guy. You've got Darrell Henderson, who they drafted in the third round in 2019, who's a really good, versatile running back. I think that's a really nice, like, top 2. And then Xavier Jones, Raymond Calais, like, they could maybe late in the draft another running back. I don't see them doing that necessarily, though. I really like this pickup. They signed Sean Robinson to replace Michael Brockers, who they traded I think they traded, didn't just cut. I think they traded him. Sebastian Joseph Day. They really like Day or Joseph Day a lot. And he's penciled in. It seems they're starting nose tackle. Of course, Aaron Donald, which with his trouble earlier, or that I talked about earlier, he might miss some games this year. They really like 2019 fourth round pick Greg Gaines, which I expected him to start at nose tackle. That's going to be a battle and a solid rotation on the nose. Donald's going to play so many snaps that pretty much all the rotation position is going to be with Robinson. But that is a spot I feel like they could improve, is their rotation behind Robinson and Donald. Eric Banks and Jonah Williams are basically replacement level guys. You would like a little more than that. Or at least I would. Linebacker, they brought Leonard Floyd back. You've got 2018 fifth round pick Ogbonia Okongwu. Oh, it jumped on me. Okoronkwo. Which I remember him from his draft class, because there was a lot of people who believed he was a really raw player, but someone who had a lot of upside. Because there were a lot of people who had him graded higher than a fifth round guy, who thought he could be a steal in the draft. You've got last year's third round pick Terrell Lewis, who I think Lewis is going to this year really press Okoronkwo for the starting role in that position. Potentially. Because I thought he was better. He had some injuries in college, but he's a great athlete, and when he was healthy, he was really productive and a disruptor for the Alabama Crimson Tide. I felt like getting him in the third round was kind of a steal for the Rams. I thought he was solidly a second round prospect with first round upside. But beyond that, they don't have a lot of depth there. That's probably somewhere they're going to target, is potentially edge type guys, defensive line depth. At linebacker, the guys penciled as their starters are Micah Kaiser and Troy Reeder. They traded for Kenny Young last year, but he didn't really take hold of a starting spot. Traven Howard was a 7th round pick in 2018, but he hasn't really developed. I mean, 7th round picks are lottery tickets though, so it's not like it's not like it's a super surprise. So they could definitely use middle linebacker help. Now on the outside, they're having to replace some people. Considering Troy Hill left in free agency, John Johnson left in free agency, but they like their secondary regardless. They like Jordan Fuller, former second round pick, or 2019 second round pick Taylor Rapp. They really like Terrell Burgess, who they drafted in the third round last year. I'm kind of surprised to see him that low on the depth chart. I think he had an injury, but I would expect him and Rapp and Fuller to be their main three guys, although they do like Juju Hughes. And I've seen talk about him from I remember some talk about him being a fringe guy that they really liked his potential. But at corner's another place they need more depth.
Dang, I got blow my nose again.
So at the corner position, like you've got Jalen Ramsey, that's a lockdown spot. Beyond that, though, you've got David Long, who was a third-round pick in 2019, who I liked. They have Darius Williams, who they got off waivers from Baltimore, penciled as a starter right now. I don't love that, though. And they don't really have a whole lot of depth at corner. Tyreek McGee, not really familiar with him. Dante Dion, not super familiar with him either. So, with that being said, for the Rams at 57, it really seems like corner would be the most prevalent need on this team. And I keep mentioning him. Tyson Campbell be a good fit here. He'd be a good fit for the way a lot of teams are playing these days. Eric Stokes would be a good fit here. I just don't think Kelvin Joseph is going to fall this far. I don't think Asante Samuel will fall down this far. I even figure Molden will probably be off the board. But if Joseph or Molden's on the board, they'd be great fits. As would Campbell and Stokes. Then they've got 2 third-round picks, so pick 88, pick 103. I think this would be a really good spot for, or at 88. Once again, I talk a lot in this range about linebackers. Monty Rice. I think Monty Rice would be a really good fit for them with his coverage ability. If Jabril Cox was available at 88 somehow, he'd be a good pick. They could even afford probably to go corner again in round 3 as well. Maybe get Taylor out of Washington, or go for a slot guy like Trey Brown out of Oklahoma. Kind of smaller. He could play on the outside, but he's smaller, and his quickness in the slot would be a huge benefit. His quickness and change of direction. Then rounds 4, 6, 7. Interior line depth, they probably should draft a center guard type somewhere on day 3. They could target a receiver. They could draft a running back, but I don't think they need to. Edge is another option at like 80, 103. Or in round 4. Of course, I said like interior defensive line, like could potentially be a need. I feel like a guy like J. Tuafele or Joe Togia would be a really good guy to have directly backing up A'Shawn Robinson and rotating with him. So, but yeah, so that's that. So thank you for listening to the stream today, or listening to the archive. Thanks for giving me a shot. If you liked the stream today, please hit the like button. It'll help my poor little channel out.
Hit the subscribe button if you want more. And if you want to make sure you don't miss a stream, hit that notification bell next to the subscribe button and turn notifications to all. That way you don't miss out on anything. Please leave comments. I do read the comments. And, thanks once again just for giving me a shot. So, with that being said, I hope y'all have a great rest of your Thursday. I will be back at my normal time of 2 o'clock p.m. Central tomorrow for the Friday show. We'll be wrapping up our Draft Primer series with the AFC South and my Tennessee Titans. So, be there, be square. Thanks again, and hope y'all, like I said, have a great rest of your day.